I will now pass the mic, and Kim Bryden will be our keynote speaker today. Kim is she's actually going to be providing very valuable insights into the growing trend of buying local products and how value-added producers can capitalize on this opportunity. She has extensive experience in the field. She works with many small businesses in the value-added world, and helping them with the growth strategies, marketing, and identifying opportunities. So with that said, I'll give the mic to Kim. Thank you, Matt.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good to see some new faces, familiar faces. Woo! Okay, so we're going to talk about building an empowered supply. But in order for us to really understand what it means to build an empowered supply, we have to understand what is the market or game we're entering into. Because how can we make sure that you're empowered if we don't know really the lay of the land? So we're going to talk first about actually what is the big business landscape that we as small businesses are coming into to better position ourselves in this highly competitive industry. Yeah, it comes to no surprise to many of us producers that many people make your product, right? So we got to make sure that we're figuring out what is your position, because somebody else probably makes the thing that you're making. So when we think about this at Cureate, we're often thinking about again, that unique value proposition and making sure that those small businesses are set up for success. So from a big business perspective, it comes to no surprise to you all that we live in a system that big business often devalues labor, cares little about environmental impact, and pulls money out of our communities and into the hands of a few, creating more power and wealth imbalance when big business continues to buy from other big business. And I'm here to ask the question of, why are we okay with that status quo? Don't we want more money circulating back into our local communities to not have that same impact? And that's why Cureate exists. That's our entire mission, is to make sure that we're shifting more dollars back into our local communities to build up that empowered supplier to meet this changing consumer demand. Like Emiliano said, I'm Kim. I'm the CEO of Cureate. We started in 2014, and I've now been doing this for the past 8 years. And so I'm here to really think about, again, how are we positioning ourselves to enter into this economic landscape, knowing that right now our system is set up for one big business to buy from another big business. We've all experienced it. You go into a university, a hospital, a convention center, the grocery stores, Walmart and Amazon duking it out, right? These are big businesses here. So how do we make sure that we're playing this game? So let's talk about why it is this way in order for us to be able to disrupt the status quo. Well, the first thing that happens in the marketplace is that there's a lot of consolidation. Surprise, surprise to no one here. But this is a particular stat that happens in the food service industry. Again, these are spaces like our universities and hospitals and convention centers. These are the main three competitors in food service management companies that really dominate the market: Compass Group, Sodexo, and Aramark. And so if you're looking to really amplify your business's products in these spaces, you have to know that these are the people who are the keys to that castle, so to speak. And then on the grocery side, again, there's a lot of individuals that you might be wanting to enter into from a grocery retail perspective, but most of those are supplied by large distributors, your UNFI, your KEYNOTE, the regional distributors like Rainforest. So in order for you to really get into these market opportunities, you have to assess the landscape and see who are the people purchasing and what would make them want to change the way that they're buying. Right? What is the problem that they're having that you could exist to solve? Well, there's a really interesting movement right now in particularly food service management where a lot of people are moving to self-operated systems and actually getting rid of their food service management companies. And this is a really unique trend because that university student is actually become, hello Gen Z, woo woo, like amazing. They care a lot about sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They don't want Slim Jims and Red Dye Mountain Dew. People want better for you, healthier local products. And because of this change in consumer demand, it is waking up our larger businesses to be like, wait, I don't know if I want to get behind the way that this system has been set up before. What happens if we actually bring this in-house and start operating it on our own? This is a very large undertaking. You can imagine you've got to hire an entire culinary director, a whole suite of sous chefs, right? This is not an easy feat. But some of our main buyer partners that we work with at Cureate, that I'll talk about in a moment, ranging from Johns Hopkins University to George Washington University Hospital, have made that shift. And it's pretty remarkable to see. And so if we want to make sure that these spaces are providing the products that our end consumers want, we need to be mindful of what is happening in the larger marketplace of why people are continuing to hold those contracts or maybe lose those contracts. Ooh, right? Okay, so let's say there is still a food service management company, or let's say there's still this distributor that you're working with in this larger grocery retail space. What can we do about it? What as a small business might we be able to do about it to start shifting the needle and possibly moving more money back into our small businesses? Aside from you having great, incredible, tasty products, right? That's the bare minimum. You gotta taste good. It's gotta be consistently produced. But we have to think about the business too. What is set up against you or for you? Next thing we have to think about are your contracts. I know you're like, Kim, I'm so this is a work day. You're going to talk about contracts, annoying, but it's true. And so oftentimes in these big business systems, we have this setup that's called a lowest bidder system, where oftentimes if you're receiving a potential request for a proposal, it will say something like, we need muffins for the police department. These muffins need to be you can only put in your cost per unit on the muffins. And then the lowest bid of the lowest cost of that muffin is awarded the contract. This is a not real example. I'm giving you a metaphor here. But this happens all the time. I've seen things just like this. And what is frustrating about lowest bidder procurement systems is that there's no way for us to fully describe all of these unique value propositions that small businesses have. By just putting my unit cost of a muffin, maybe that person who's supplying that muffin just went to Restaurant Depot and bought a bunch of muffins. That could have definitely happened. But if there was a way to communicate, actually by buying this muffin, you're supporting a woman of color owned business 5 miles up the road, and we have gluten-free certification, right? There's no way for me to say that in this sort of setup. And so when you're going to pitch yourselves as small business owners into these larger distribution systems or into these larger contractual food service spaces, any chance you get to tell your story and emphasize those unique value propositions will absolutely set you apart. Because undoubtedly, you're not going to win in this lowest bidder space, unfortunately. And so you need to be really convincing around what are all the value adds that you have that really elevate the overall reason that your product will move off of the shelf. And that might be who you are, how you produce, your workforce. I'm sure a lot of these things you talked about through your 6-month program. So down here at the bottom, Rockefeller Foundation put together this unique one-pager after COVID around what our system, by system I mean food system, might need in the wake of COVID to build a more resilient food supply chain. And one of the things that came out was, how do we have more values-based procurement, or designing with the problem in mind instead of the solution. One example I'll give is during COVID, a lot of RFPs I saw come out said something like, we need grocery boxes for our community, and inside those grocery boxes, it needs to have a Dole fruit cup, pinto can of beans. You know, it was very prescriptive of like, these are the exact things that I need in the box. And I understand the intention. It was around like making sure that there was nutrition density in the box, that there was a variety of products that would serve that community member who was getting those groceries. But if we were designing really with that end user in mind, what might an RFP look like if it was written, for example, this box needs to have X amount of protein. It needs to have X amount of caloric intake. And however you design that box is what you're putting in the proposal. Like, it's up to you, person who's bidding on this RFP, to say, how are you going to achieve that particular requirement that I'm looking for? As opposed to being prescriptive of being like, I need this Dole fruit cup. And what ended up happening is we ran out of Dole fruit cups. Like, there was just a big mismatch in supply and demand because everyone was trying to fulfill this very scripted contract. And so anytime, I know there's a lot of individuals here of both small business and government and larger business, anytime you have the opportunity to rethink how your contracts are written, to be more of a question around like, this is the problem I have, who might be a possible solution for this problem, instead of dictating what you think the solution already is, the better. And I know that's really scary and really changes the way in which we think about procurement in general, but really describing the problem that we're looking to serve and then having people actually respond and say this is how they're looking to solve it. So as a small business, when you're entering these conversations and you have like 10 minutes to pitch yourself, or less, which you're about to do, the best way to think about it is like, again, what is the problem that this particular business needs to solve, and why am I the unique person to solve it? It's really important because, again, they're coming at it through their lens. The next thing and last thing that I'll bring up in terms of like, why is the market the way it is right now, is that in small business, particularly for our farmers in the audience, possibly, woo woo, there's so many things that happen in our food system that tend to be like handshake deals, or like, yeah, like plant it and like then I'll buy it. Like, sure, just like let me know when it's harvested. And that is really hard, because then when I actually do harvest that crop and I'm like, okay, it's ready, like I'm ready for you to buy it, it's like, oh, well, the price went up, I actually like don't need that anymore. It's like, wait, I grew this all because you told me that there was an opportunity. Ugh, it happens all of the time. And so for the small business, there's a lot of fear around just growing to grow without knowing where there's a sales channel. But for the bigger business, it's also scary for them, because if they don't have a consistent supply, their customer is upset. And so both people are coming to the equation in somewhat of like a scarcity mindset, or just feeling like, oh no, don't screw me over. Oh gosh, don't screw me over. You know, it's just really, it can be kind of contentious. And so these are the things that we have heard straight from particularly farmers' feedback. It's like, can we get some commitments around what do you want me to plant? How much do you want me to plant? Seems pretty obvious, right? And then by having some sort of commitment or purchase order for that amount, that actually is something that someone can now take to a bank and collateralize and say, I actually have this commitment for my crop planting and my future harvest. CASA. Anyway, for my future harvest, that I actually need to build up my greenhouse, build a wash pack station. I have something to actually bank because I have this future commitment that I have to uphold. And so the ways in which we can actually be working together to provide both cash for products that are grown, but also for that interstitial access to capital, because we're now actually collateralizing that future purchase order. Now, there might be something a bank requires outside of that. That is like you need to talk to your own financial legal counsel. I'm not here to tell you that. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is that the more that you can have an agreement with the people that you're in relationship with around what their product movement might be, the better you can set yourself up for success. Because if you don't know how much they're going to buy, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, Whole Foods is knocking at my door. This is the big one. Like, I am I gotta build up my inventory. Like, I've got to make sure I've raised enough capital. But what if they just start you in one pilot store to begin and you move through like 2 cases a month? And now you've spent all this money on backstock and inventory and you're like, wait, I thought this was my ticket. So making sure you have those clear conversations so that you know where you're putting your investment and also where you're understanding those clear expectations around purchasing from that larger institution. Again, grocery, food service, what have you. And so it's happening across many different systems, recognizing that there is a need for this like upfront commitment in order for the capacity to be built from the small business side. And I think COVID really illuminated this of being able to say like, shoot, when the COVID sweeps through the Tyson's Meat Processing Center, like we need to know what chicken processors are in our backyards. You know, it's illuminating that we need to build up more resiliency and redundancy in our system. And I think that's something we all, well, I guess I shouldn't speak for everyone in the room. I feel like we all in this room really care about is like, how do we make sure that within Maryland or within the Mid-Atlantic, we're building up that resiliency of small business and small producers and small processors in our backyards. This is a really great podcast that I encourage you all to listen to. Who Do You Want Controlling Your Food? It's on the Daily. That talks a lot about this topic around what has happened to the market and why we got to where we are, and now like what can we do about it. And so at Cureate, the way we're really thinking about this problem and how to solve it, I want to give a little anecdote. This is Cortland. Some of you have heard me talk about Cortland before, but he was a retail manager for University of Maryland Medical Center downtown. He now works in Pennsylvania, but he was amazing. So Cortland is one of our buyer partners, and through us, through Cureate Connect, he purchases local products to stock in their retail space. And so he realizes that his customers, like I said before, don't want Slim Jims and Red Dye Mountain Dew. They want healthier, fresher local products. But he's like, how do I do this? Because my system only like buys from Cisco, UNFI, etc. Like, where am I supposed to get this product? Because it's not always happening through those larger broadline distributors. On the opposite side of the spectrum, this is Iman. She, as I've written here, is an Egyptian woman who runs a mission-driven business producing award-winning vegan fare. She was in Clarksville. She's just opened her new location in Baltimore, so definitely check her out. She's at Our House. It's amazing and delicious. Love Iman. Iman came through our Cureate Courses program, and that's our way to equip business owners with tools and resources needed to really grow and scale their businesses. And the lessons we learn by doing purchasing for these larger entities really helps inform us on the education side, because we're constantly getting feedback around, again, what the market demand is and how are we positioning you, this business, within the context of what people are looking to buy. So Cortland wants to buy from Iman, and Iman wants to sell to Cortland, but they can't. And they can't for some really like fundamentally unique reasons. One, big business systems are set up to buy from other big businesses. And so it's very hard for them to buy from like the kale grower and the beef jerky guy and the kombucha lady. Like, they're just not set up to go with individual suppliers. It's really hard. They also don't want to like pay all of the individual suppliers. And I would also say talk to all of the different suppliers. So from an administrative standpoint, it can get really dicey to bring on a one unique individual. And from a supplier perspective, like, these sales cycles for these larger entities are long, very long. It takes a long time to change systems. And so if you're in the kitchen or you're producing day over day, week over week, it can just be really time consuming to keep up with, like, it's me again, back with that product, do you still want it? You know, it takes a lot of time and resources. So what we're doing at Cureate is really trying to connect the two by being that sales advocate for local product procurement while also alleviating the administrative burden for the buyers. So we're providing this service to our buyer partners to be able to purchase from small local businesses, and that small local business, they just get a purchase order. They just immediately get an order. Yay. Oftentimes small businesses are like, what is the catch here? And I'm like, no catch. The buyer pays us for our services. And they're like, no. And I'm like, yes, that is actually accurate. It's amazing. I know. Okay, so again, how does this work? We have Cureate courses. It's our 10-course bespoke curriculum. We've graduated entrepreneurs throughout DC, Maryland, Virginia, and just got recruited to Arkansas. We've graduated over 300, I know, Arkansas. Classic DC, Arkansas expansion. I know. I know, so silly. But actually, to this point, I talked to the Economic Development Council in Northwest Arkansas, which is where Walmart, J.B. Hunt, and Tyson's are all located. And I said, you're trying to recruit people to move here from Austin and San Francisco and the like. And what are the opportunities for small business to really grow and flourish here with, Fortune 1 in the backyard? And they were like, that is a good point. And I was like, yep. And so anyways, we launched there 2 years ago. And it's very interesting to see parallels actually between the Arkansas market and Virginia because of the latitude they're on. It's very similar growing seasons. Anyways, so through Cureate courses, we've graduated over 300 entrepreneurs. On average, we see about a 20% increase in revenues by the end of the program. And then there's Cureate Connect. That's, again, the purchasing side. So we work with Anchor Institution Food Service and become the local purchasing team for these accounts. So essentially, we're the outsourced buyer for them to buy local goods. Last week, no joke, the requests I got were fried ice cream and dandelion greens. Totally opposite asks. Could not be more different, And so we're getting requests all the time about random stuff they're looking to buy. One was for an event, one was for the salad bar, It totally changes. And then the last thing is Cureate Consult. We work with large businesses and government entities to help understand where food systems are moving and how things are changing in the landscape. So those three things together is what comprise our business model. And I wanted to provide one example of how University of Maryland Medical System that I brought up, Cortland was from, has been one of our most dedicated buyer partners and advocates for this work since 2018. They started working with us through purchasing, through Cureate Connect at the downtown campus. We now buy for 4 of their locations. We've shifted over $250,000 back into local small business through the work with them. Then during COVID, because we all recognize that, again, our food system is changing, we started doing some groundwork around what could it look like to possibly build a produce processing facility that could service the entire medical system. What would that look like? What would that entail? How would that, where would it even go? What would be the CapEx, the build out cost? What would be the OpEx? When would it break even? All of those factors. And in order for us to really possibly make that investment into very large infrastructure spend, I'm looking at some of you who do this all the time and finance these projects. It is no small undertaking. There has to be a funnel of potential suppliers in the pipeline that are ready to possibly meet that demand. And so the last part of this equation is Cureate courses, and that's what we've been working on with University of Maryland Medical System and Baltimore Community Lending. And we've launched 4 cohorts around the state of Maryland. In the fall was Prince George's County, Charles County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County. And now this spring is farmers throughout the state, Anne Arundel, and Eastern Shore. And so next slide, I'm going to show you a quick video about the impact from the fall cohort. But I just want to make one note about Connect. There's Iman again. Woot woot. One thing that we do with our accounts is not just procurement for retail, like that beef jerky example I keep giving, but also integration through Hotbar. Both back of house food service, like I'm buying sausages for the game day, Hotbar station, but also takeovers. So Iman actually takes over the Hotbar inside the hospital, and then she gets paid for that, the meals she sells. And that's been a really, really fantastic way to increase employee engagement and excitement because, cafeterias. Thanks, Emiliano. Yeah, okay. And then Julia here of Maracas, also a Cureate Courses graduate. We bought 4,000 red, white, and blue paletas from her for a staff appreciation event. Sizable order. That is a lot of paletas, you know? And so that's what we're constantly fielding all the time is like, those are two very different requests. And so we're trying to figure out who is the right product market fit for each of these opportunities. And one might be better suited for a larger small business, and the other might be like, hey, I need like a box of chocolate truffles for Mother's Day to put at the point of sale. And we can work with a very small chocolatier producer. Like not all opportunity has to be for one size of small business. Okay, I think what I have to do for this video is hand you the mic. Okay, here we go.
Making sure that we support our local businesses is something that I feel very strongly about, and I'm glad that there's something like this here that creates a space for that and makes the community aware of the local businesses that we have here.
Boy, let me tell you, this is going to be a hard decision. So much talent, so much creativity. I am ready. We are so excited to be here at the holiday market.
I'm at the New Lexington Market, and there's some great vendors there, and I am going to try a turkey hot dog.
We are a mission-based lender, a community development financial institution. What a great day and milestones for this partnership with University of Maryland, Medical System, and Cureate.
Cureate really helped me manage the ability to build a team and really how one should treat their team and manage their team. I actually brought on one more person since taking the courses, and it really gave me guidance and perspective on how to be a good leader for my team.
Cureate has given me so many takeaways, but one that sticks out in mind is leveraging all your connections. I'm very grateful to be at a program like this, and I'm going to leverage a lot of my connections going forward.
And in business, I think you are only as strong as your network, and so Cureate really put us in a position to understand our business, but also understand that you need a team.
The different businesses and the people on the Cureate team have just been amazing and really tie in with what I value most in my business, which is community. I believe that these relationships will last for years to come.
My takeaway was wholesaling. So learning how to put together my price sheets and how to contact people correctly was the biggest gift that I could have gotten from the course. Getting in front of buyers and what those buyers look for and how to maintain those buyers.
A big thanks to the Cureate team, an amazing program. Thanks to all the other folks in the cohort, made this a tremendous experience for me. Thank you.
And what I love about the program you all have been in is that entrepreneurship is very lonely and super hard. And so something that I think I hope all heard from these wonderful individuals is that the more we can create peer-to-peer learning spaces and ways that we're learning from one another and the challenges each of us have, is there a way for us to not make the same mistakes, maybe not make the same like costly mistakes perhaps by having those shared spaces for shared learning. And so I'm really excited for each of you in your growth journeys and excited to learn more about your businesses today. The last thing I'll just add about Cureate is that these are some of our partners, but we Cureate is a women business enterprise. We have national certification. And so thinking about, again, your unique value propositions, what certifications might you have that might unlock larger procurement opportunities? So for us, when we're looking at those contracts, oftentimes, because we're a women-owned business, there's an importance around supplier diversity for women and minority-owned businesses. So contractually, that entity receives supplier diversity spend because women-owned business, and then we also provide impact assessment report cards at the end of each year to say, this is what you bought, this was the percentage with women-owned, BIPOC-owned, different dietary trends like gluten-free, vegan, things like that, and also like miles radius traveled from producer to plate. And so lots of those things around, again, storytelling, the impact that you have, how you're thinking about sustainability are all really important factors in getting your foot in the door, because that's what people are looking to buy. That's where things are headed. Even if right now it's like your price point's too high, you have to make sure you're making the case around all of these other values you have and are bringing to the table. This is my hopeful goal, is to find like regional clusters for us to expand to. So if you are ever interested in any of these things, which I feel like everyone in this room can at least abide by one of them, if not all of them, I'd love to keep in touch and keep talking with all of you, and happy to keep being on this journey together, because I think we're in this new frontier of how we really work and incorporate local food into our larger systems. So thank you. Scale thoughtfully, source locally.
All right, thank you so much, Kim. All right, cool. That was pretty insightful. I think that Kim and Cureate are doing amazing work. I think there's a lot of things that come together between the Chesapeake Ag Innovation Center and Cureate and other organizations like Grow and Fortify, and and what Future Harvest is also doing. You know, Morbico, like we're all like coming together, and I feel like that's what's exciting, that we can actually come together. Shore Gourmet as well. I see Pam and Roxanne there. So I feel like, and also Maureen with Cecil County, like there's just so many people that can come together and make this happen, and I think we have the resources and the capacity to do that now. So thank you, Kim, for that. And now we're gonna start the presentations,